I was born in Sligo, which is the county renowned for musical tradition down through the years, and I would have grown up in a very musical family. My father played the concert flute, and he was very involved with music in Sligo. He was part of the old Owenmore Ceoil Band, and they played up and down the side of the country, and they went to England as well, playing for Ceoilies. Right. They were very involved. And I suppose I really would have started off, well, there would have been music at home, but we had a nun in national school in Colooney who started us all off playing tin whistles. Very good. And we had a school band, and we went to all sorts of functions, sports days, we played at little bits of weddings in the church and that would have continued right through national school. And even into the secondary school, she was still going strong, and we were still, even though we had moved on from national school, we were still part of the band, which was lovely. And we had great times. We really had great times. Well, there was a little bit on my mother's side. She might have played a small bit on the melodeon. Okay. But she was related to the great Fred Finn. Oh. And Fred was a character of characters. And great fiddle player as well. Himself and Peter Warden were renowned in Sligo. But Fred he would be visiting our house very often, and he'd come for a session maybe of music tonight, and there'd be a few musicians organised, and Fred could stay for a week or maybe 10 days sometimes, and he'd work on the farm during the day and they'd play music at night time. So he was
so he was visiting the cousin kind of thing.
So then, great character.
And then you mentioned, is it some of your family played, your brothers and sisters?
I have no brothers. I have two sisters, and both of them play. Patricia and Fionnuala, they play concert flute, and Fionnuala plays a bit on the bodhrán and the tin whistle, and piano. Bit on the piano. Fionnuala plays. Fionnuala would be nice on the piano as well. And we in the 1970s then my father reformed the Owenmore Ceoil Band, so we were all in it, Dad, my two sisters and myself, and then there was a few other men from the locality, Henry Dyer, Brendan Gannon, Paddy McDonough playing the fiddles, and then we had Benny O'Connor on the drums, Benny from the Shaskeen, and Brendan Cochran on the piano, and Benny actually organised that we made an LP with Release Records, I think maybe through Shaskeen. He had an involvement with them. So we headed off up to Dublin one day in October 1976 and made our album all in one day. Fair.
But as you left school, and so you went into secondary school, and I take a college and stuff.
I didn't go to college. I started work straight. I did a commercial course after school, and then I started work. And my first place, I worked in the bank. My first posting was in Swinford. Right. So
that's your introduction to Mayo.
Exactly. Had a lovely 3 years there. Played a good bit of music while I was in Swinford as well. We had a good branch of Coltis. We used to have sessions. I can't really remember whether it was every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, but we used to go to Casey's in Swinford, and we'd go to Harkins, and we had a good branch there. Bríd O'Connell was part of it, Pádraig Harkin, Aidan Harkin, and Seamus O'Mungan, and he was part of the branch as well. So we had loads of music, and he would have loads of scales from him as well, and a few songs and everything. Very knowledgeable man, lovely man, lovely man. I was there until 1976, and then I got transferred down to Ballina.
Very good.
And I was still in the good old Mayo, and that's when I met Sylvie.
All right.
So we met through music as well, actually. So
can you remember where you met, or how you met, or what was it?
We actually met in a place here in Ballina called the Georgian.
Right.
It's now the Cotton Cobble down the Sligo Road.
Okay,
And we met, it was a charity function that Molly Maguire, the owner of the premises, had organised for some nun who was out in Africa, I think. And it was a charity function, and I was only in Ballina, and she came into the bank to see would I play a few tunes at it, and Sylvie was the main band backing all the guests, and the rest is history.
Father Michael Cleary, God rest him, was the guest on the night.
The main guest.
He was the main guest.
He was the guest.
He was. You see, he was quite a character. He was not a bad singer, and had loads of stories and jokes and that.
Yeah. So he's an entertainer.
He was. He used to go around. He used to go around. They had a couple of priests that were called the singing priests, and they used to go around doing various concerts. But it was packed.
It was packed, yeah. I think they raised a load of money for whatever nun charity.
It was for a priest. It was for a priest or a nun.
It was a nun. I thought it was a nun.
It could be a nun.
Yeah,
a nun.
Yeah.
Well, I came from a parish of Kilfine, which is it's between Killala, Ballycastle and Crossmaglen. It kind of lies in the middle of all. It's about 4 miles from Killala. But my local school was Ratheskin National School. There were 3 schools in the parish, but that was probably the closest to us. And I suppose the first bit of music I ever learned was in the national school. Even though my late mother and father used to play, my mother was not a bad singer and used to play the accordion, and my father could knock a few tunes on the accordion as well, you know.
Yeah.
But we had a teacher. A teacher came to the school called Mary Loftus, and she was very interested in music, and she insisted on us on teaching us all singing. And the whistle, the whistle was the instrument of choice.
Yeah. Lots of schools.
So I suppose I was average enough on it, you know, and I don't know how. I think she used to be on to my mother, you know, that I should learn the fiddle, even though she couldn't teach the fiddle. Now, you know, she made it clear she didn't know anything about the fiddle, but the fiddle was got anyway, and I just was trying to figure out how I might start a tune on it, but it was tuned. Somebody must have tuned it, because I wouldn't have a clue how to tune it, you know. But I suppose I got the brainwave that if I could transfer the scale of the whistle onto 2 with the strings, onto 2 with the strings, which I figured out.
Fair play to you.
Which I figured out, and I was able to learn something like the dawning of the day or something like that, you know. And that's how I started. But I suppose I had a bit of an interest in it on account of a bit of music at home and singing and that, you know. But and my mother's mother, on her side, and her aunt were both the old melodeon players. And her aunt was I believe now was fairly good, and used to play for house dances at the time and that kind of thing around. They came from the parish of Mhaigh Eo, which is it's the next parish. Yeah,
the melodeon seems to be mentioned an awful lot back in grandparents' generations, like, so it was again the instrument.
But I'd say accordions nobody started making accordions. I'd say the Black Dot Honer was probably the first.
Well, Honer was making them, and
it was probably the melodeons that were on sale in music shops here, whatever couple of music shops over around the place.
And of course they were probably more affordable than.
And they were more affordable. And they had a great sound, they're great volume in their day, you see. They're great volume, you see. And that suited the house dances. But anyways, in our next village then there was a fella called Willie Burke. And he was a shoemaker. He and his father were shoemakers, cobblers, or whatever you call them at the time. And he was also quite an accomplished player, like in his day, because he could play both fiddle and accordion, and had loads of tunes.
And plenty of tunes.
Plenty of tunes, because he was friendly with the family that lived just down over Palmerstown Bridge. There were Knox families. They were called Knoxes, and they, for some reason, they were very interested in the music, and the family had a kind of a family Ceilidh band, and Willie used to often play with them so that he learned all the tunes. They had O'Neill's books and.
So there was an interest in it.
Oh yeah.
And could you talk, like, would there be that area you're talking about, Ballycastle, Killala, Palmerstown Bridge, Lacken? Was there a bit of like? Can you remember any kind of pockets of musicians, or besides these ones you mentioned? But like, I
don't really remember man. There was another man in the parish, John Barrett was his name, and he used to play the fiddle. Both he and his sister Bridgie, and she was a grand player now. She was a lovely fiddle player, but he played the fiddle as well. Then in the neighbouring parish, Mayo, there were a couple of fiddle players. There was Joe Breen and Eddie Stanton used to play the accordion. The two of them used to play together. And I believe there was a man called Hugh Finnerty, but I never met the man now, but I believe he was quite a good fiddle player. Yeah, he used to play at all the house dances back probably in the 50s.
The house dances seem to be very popular, so therefore to give you an idea that if people talked about house dances, there was
some level of musician to play.
Yeah, there must have been someone. Yeah. My grandmother used to talk about people playing on the piece of paper and the comb.
Oh yeah.
They didn't have an instrument, they'd come into the music like a kazoo,
Or a Jaws harp or something.
Or a Jaws harp, or Lilton. But they didn't have a melodeon or
Lilton.
So that was your kind of early days.
I picked up tunes anyway from Willie. Then God rest him, used to call Tower House. He probably heard I had got a fiddle or something. I don't know how he heard, but he called Tower House a couple of times, and then he used to call most Friday nights. And I learned a lot of tunes from just listening to him playing. You know, tunes I wouldn't have a clue. Boys of the Loch, Sligo, Sligo Maids. Those kind of tunes.
The uncommon.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So of course, then I suppose the teacher in used to when the fashion would come along, Ballycastle, Crossmaglen, whatever. She'd insist that we'd all go. Like there might be 5 or 6. In the school they were fairly average, I suppose.
So they were wheeled out.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to win sometimes,
Brilliant.
So that was basically it. Then I went to secondary school, and I suppose the interest waned.
I could imagine.
Yeah. It wasn't. It wasn't the cool thing to be, to play music back then. It wasn't. No. And that was the start of it was the 60s. It was the Rolling Stones, Beatles, that type of thing.
But you still had an interest in music.
Oh God, yeah. But then again, I suppose in the 60s, it was a great time for the bands and the music and the halls and marquees and that. And I suppose I had a great interest in it.
Yeah.
And.
Just before our conversation, you mentioned was it a priest there that used to come with the gramophone?
Oh yeah. In the secondary school, Father Paddy Gallagher.
Right.
Well, he's still alive, Monsignor Paddy Gallagher, but he used to come down to us every Tuesday night teaching us singing, and he got a choir going, like 3-4 part harmony choir, Oh yeah. And we used to be wheeled out to do things in the cathedral, and that kind of thing, But he was a brilliant organ player. Right. He was the organist actually in the cathedral.
Okay.
He was.
Yeah.
But he used to come down, and of course, he teaches a couple of songs, the Men of Hennick and The Hollow and all those type of songs, and then he would bring in this record player. This reel-to-reel record player from the car, set up the speakers and classical music. Like he wanted us, to have an appreciation, and he played Beethoven and
so he was
and Mozart.
This stuff into
Mozart. Not too heavy, no. Not too heavy.
Wasn't too precision with it.
Not too heavy, but some of the lighter stuff, And to this day, I still, I hear some of the tunes yet, and I say, gee, I remember that, like from.
I remember him playing that.
I do. Yeah.
Some of the
but it was fair play to him at the time, We didn't appreciate it.
But looking back, and that's the whole thing about appreciation.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to get old.
You have
to age a bit to realise what you were given when you were younger.
Yeah. But I suppose then, I finished in the secondary school in 68, and even though the band business was great in the 60s, and I remember going to the marquees in Killala, all the top bands. The Easter Festival had all the top bands, which is I suppose the only marquee anywhere in the West that had them, because they wouldn't take a chance on booking them, because they were big money. But they got the crowds, there'd be 1,000, 1,200 people a night.
And who'd organise these?
There was a handball committee. They wanted to build a new handball alley in Killala, and there was a handball committee set up.
Wow.
And it was spearheaded by a man called Sean Hennick. God rest him, he died since. But he was a real entrepreneur, like in everything, you know.
He was thinking ahead.
Yeah,
he was able to take the risk.
Yeah, he set up a factory in Killala, what do you call it, precision engineering, and it's still going strong down there. But he was that type of man, and he said, like, you know, that it was, you know, if they booked the top bands, they get the crowds, and they did. They used to come from all over, Sligo, Roscommon, Leitrim, all over. But,
as we were talking about as well, then, like I was talking about Pat Field and so on, the crossover in that time was, or the interest at that time was show bands.
Show bands,
and that's what we're talking about. And the 2 year kind of would have played in that kind of a forum as well. Your music would be very much.
Yeah, it was show bands. They, you know, speaking of the market, they always held a Ceilidh. Friday night was Ceilidh night, and you know, straight away, you know, you'd be looking to get 200-300 people at the Ceilidh. Whereas of the ordinary nights you'd be looking at 1,000-1,200 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the interest wasn't there. All that was going to the Ceilidh was the older people who could dance.
Yeah, the people who could dance, understood the music.
And they could dance the sets and the head sets and the Siege of Venices and all that.
Probably started together playing in the pubs and that in around
86 probably. 86, 87.
So that's when you started playing as
a duo.
Yeah. Had you any musical projects apart from that before you kind of played yourselves? Like, can you, like, I think.
Well, we were invited over to the Celtic Festival in 1982, weren't we?
Lorient, 82 and 83.
82 and 83.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of, it wouldn't be a Ceilidh band, but it was a kind of a musical group. Your father, God rest him.
Yes, Rory Summers was with us that time.
Right. Rory is with us. He
John
was.
McHugh.
He was.
My sisters.
Yeah.
And ourselves too.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
we had 2 years there, which was great.
Yeah, it was a lovely festival.
Beautiful festival. Before that, I was in America. Twice on a cultist tour. 1973 and 1974, and we also toured England with the same tour group.
And what cultists, you did a fair bit of teaching over the years, I believe, as well.
I did. I was teaching in Sligo, and then when I came to Ballina, I was teaching in Rehan's school, where Jerry McNulty was principal at the time, and all the McNulty family turned out to be great musicians, and they still kept it up to this day. And I taught in Clohans and Garrettlow school as well.
So you travelled around
the
facility teaching. And how did you find the interest from these young ones that you were teaching going into schools? I take it their age group was like mid-teens, kind of.
Well, they were probably from maybe 10 upwards,
right. Okay,
around. Maybe younger. Some of them maybe only starting off of that.
Yeah.
I used to say at the time, if I could take 10 out of the 40 that wanted to learn, they weren't being
and
made.
focus on them. I know.
Yeah.
Again, before the conversation started, we were talking about other groups that you were in yourself. You were in a couple of.
As I was saying,
a man of many talents.
The band business, I suppose, the show band business, as it is called, was coming to an end towards the end of the 60s, which was sad because it was a huge business in the 60s. There were about 400 working bands in the country. And you talk 7-8 people like on each band. Look at employment there was.
That's a lot of employment.
Look at employment. And then you had the spin-off of the halls and mineral bears and all that type of thing. But anyway, it was coming to an end. The dry halls were probably, you couldn't get a license. You couldn't get a liquor license for a hall. So it was
really an end of an era because
it was the end of an era. It was. Well, it lasted from the 50s and into the 60s, but then it came to an end. It was changing. The disco scene really hadn't come in until probably a bit later, but country bands, there was a craze then for country bands. I don't know where that came out of. The first I remember. Getting back to the bands again, probably one of the top bands in the country was the Capital Show Band, and every one of them was just top notch. Paddy Cole was the leader, and even to this day he's playing great music, fantastic music. But there were two brothers from Galway on the band. Johnny Kelly and Des Kelly. Johnny Kelly recorded the Black Velvet Band, which was huge at the time, and his brother Des recorded a country song called The Streets of Baltimore, and it went straight to #1 here. and it was just out of the blue. And they were a jazz, pop, jazzy, Dixieland jazz band.
But quite accomplished musicians.
And he recorded this song, "The Streets of Baltimore," to Bobby Beer song. It was straight to '1. And
could you put that down to say the birth of radio, for instance, or people listening to?
I think they were listening to more Radio Luxembourg, and they started listening to the playing music like Hank Williams and that type of thing, and that probably
gave them a taste.
It gave them a taste, and country gradually came in then, and of course it was a different format, because you had no brass.
No.
All the brass. All
the boys got sacked.
The brass boys got sacked. So it was
retrain.
It was now basically just the basic bands, drums, bass, piano, guitars, and fiddle. There had to be a fiddle and steel guitar to give it to get the country sound. And there were some very, very good country bands here. The Smoky Mountain Ramblers, Cotton Mill Boys, Ray Lynham and the Hillbillies, they were top notch.
And for the county here, can you remember some bands that were represented?
Country bands. There weren't. We started a band. Of course, it was a few of us down in the Killarney area got in on the act, and we started a band. We were called the Outlaws. And as a country band, of course, I was drafted in because I could play a bit on the fiddle, and I was the fiddle player. But it wasn't too bad, I suppose. We did a fair bit of work around Mayo, Sligo, Donegal, that type of thing. But we had a short life. We were gone again, and we started in 1970 and finished in around 1972, 73. But I started a trio then, just doing pubs and. Around that time, music in pubs started, because there wouldn't be much music in pubs. It wasn't, pubs weren't known for music then, like they just wouldn't. They might have a bit of a session, some of them, but they wouldn't have any kind of live music as such.
Like
so it was starting
lounge type song,
lounge type. So it was starting big time, and we did a fair bit of work. Now we did a residency in Tom's Top 10, which is a great pub in Inniscrone. I'd say for 25, 30 years.
That's long.
Doing every Monday and Thursday night. Yeah. But then Deirdre and myself kind of started doing gigs around 1986. And we did a residency in Pontoon Bridge. Until it closed in 2014.
So that was a good while as well.
Yeah, every Friday night.
Wow. We did about 17 or 18 years, I suppose.
We did.
Yeah, that's really good.
It was the first kind of, you could call it a social dancing thing, because there was a lovely dance floor, and people used to come, and there was a great interest in dancing, wasn't there?
Oh yeah.
In dancing and the same people. Sure. It was good. It was a nice kind of a night, But. So that's it. When that closed, then I was still do the odd gig, but not too much. A lot of it kind of, the pub scene went kind of down a bit.
In the last, we'd say, even before COVID, like how have you been playing music up to COVID? Had you sessions? Had you any kind of local?
Well, we used to have. We had a nice session going on the Friday night. We had a group of musicians meet up every Friday night. Pádraig Morell, Mick Shannon, Brian and Maeve Gallagher, John Burke, Aileen Burke, John Cosgrove, John Hegarty, Damien. What's Damien's second name? Can't remember. But we might meet in the Merry Monk for a Friday night. We could go to Muddy Burns another night, go to Crossmalina, Killala.
So you travel around.
We go out then to Brian and Maeve's territory out in
Dinny's
in Rossport.
So
we'd have a Friday night out there as well.
That's a good spot.
So that we were really enjoying that until the lockdown came. But hopefully we'll get back to it again.
But even during the lockdown, I know it's not the same, but would you play a few tunes here in the house?
Very few.
Very few.
We tried with the group to do a bit of Zoom.
Right.
But I'm afraid it wasn't successful. It didn't work.
Don't mention the word Zoom.
there could be a few notes ahead in one house.
I know, it'll be very messy.
But we had a few tunes here one night now. We had John Burke and Aileen were down one night and we had a nice tune. And, we met up another night out in Monica McCarrick's house. Monica and Tom play banjo. It was their brother that got killed in the air crash here. Michael McCarrick, he used to play the guitar and he used to always come to our Friday night session before his demise.
Yeah, we had a few grand tunes up outside the mountain now.
In the Merry Monk
one Sunday.
One Sunday evening, yeah.
But just outside now, it was a lovely Sunday afternoon. Well, like with a couple of grand tunes. Yeah. But,
and we could talk a bit about with some of the memories you have of people that you'd have played with say around the place or characters. Like for instance, I know Deirdre, you played a lot with Katie bands and Cultus tours, and you played with great names such as Paddy O'Brien and Joe Burke and
did indeed, yeah,
and a few of them. Brenda McGlinchey, I think you mentioned as well. So some kind of real household names in the traditional music scene.
Yeah.
But also like what other. Just generally, what characters would you have met over the years that kind of would have stood out for you? And have you?
Well, in Clooney, in my hometown, there was two brothers. Both played the button accordion, and they would always be featured in our house if there was a tune going on. And both of them went off to work in England, and they came home one summer with an accordion, a B&C accordion for me, and it tuned up and everything, and taught me my first tunes on it.
That's
and
it
was
that's a lovely memory. Like, to have someone
you could never forget them for it. I would always,
and they saw something in you, like you were interested in this kind of
So I sort of always remember them. We had other good characters in the band. Henry Dyer played the fiddle, and he worked in England all his life too, and he'd be a good dancer as well now. And he'd be when we'd be at the Cayleys. The dancers on the floor would be looking for the music faster, and Henry would be one side of the stage and I'd be the other side, and I'd be trying to play faster and Henry would be telling me, slow down, sure they're not able to put in the steps, he used to say to me.
That's the truth.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. But they were wanting it up faster.
They were wanting it faster. He knew, he was a good dancer, and he knew that you didn't need it fast to put in the steps.
The faster the music, they could be sliding.
They could fly over. Or leave out as much as they could. And yourself, Sylvie, like there's some memories of people, and not just in traditional music, but just in the other. Actually,
we had one or two different kind of lineups. Then I suppose getting back to the Outlaws, I remember we got a fella then. He was an elderly fella at the time, but he was a very good saxophone player. He used to play, I think, it's an alto sax. Short one, a lovely sweet sound.
What high pitch kind of.
Yeah. But he was a character, you know. He was just a great character. He had, you know, there might be a row in the van some night. Or something happened. He said, "Look, lads, listen to me. Whatever you say nothing." But we're back when in Glendamoy, in Healy's Hall in Glendamoy. You know, it was the original hall now.
The old hall. I think the pub is.
But the stage was about that height. You know, when they be looking up now, the stage was that height. You had to go in around the back, and there were small little timber steps, you know, to get you up on the stage. But the stage was short each side. And there were curtains, you know. There were curtains at the back and around the side, and the stage was short. You know, the timber would say the timber came out to here, and the curtains were here. But anyways, it was a short enough stage. It was narrow, but there must be about six on the band anyway that night. And Jimmy, I was singing some song, and the sax should be coming in. There was no sax, and I turned around, and there was no Jimmy.
He fell off the stage.
He stepped out. he had fallen down. I remember then another night we were playing up in a hall called Killawalla. It's outside Westport. And Jesus, it was an awful cold night. It was snowing outside, and the cold of it. But there was a high stage enough again, but there was one of those heaters on the stage, you know, to provide a bit of heat. It wasn't a super sauna, but it was something like that with a flame in it.
Was the blower? Was it a blower?
Yeah, I know there's a flame in it. There was a flame coming out, and Gus Darnley, God rest him, was the drummer, and he was sitting at the back, as you do, and the drums, and this heater was here, you know, and I was kind of out. We were kind of out at the front because we wouldn't have all space like at the front, and there was people dancing, and there was people pointing up, and I didn't know what they were at. And I turned around, and there the big side drum was on fire. I remember grabbing the drum by one of the legs and running down and pulling it after him down the floor.
You wouldn't get away with half of that now.
There was no health and safety then.
No.
It
didn't exist. You went to what was popular in the late 60s.
Yeah, I suppose.
You had to go with that.
I suppose.
We kind of mixed it though when we'd be out, because you'd always have somebody who'd be looking for the boys about a Sudare or the Sligo Mayo.
Of course, and then they'd want to jive. It wasn't all one or the other.
And some of them would be looking for a few tunes on the whistle, and if you didn't play it, like, you know, they wouldn't be
so happy.
No. But that's how it was.
It was good to have the mix as well. Like even right up until the time we finished in Pontoon Bridge.
There was
always somebody a few people who would want the bit of tradition.
Yeah. It's lovely.
Yeah. So I didn't feel totally left out.
No, exactly. Yeah, because
no.
Because I'd say for the TUI, traditional music was very important, although he bent with the times kind of thing.
I know, like actually, even today, even the big boys on the scene, you know, the Nathan Carters, Michael Englishes, and all that, they have a traditional set in all their shows. You know, they do. I remember seeing Michael English and his keyboard player taking out 2 piano accordions and playing the Bluebell polka and something else, and it was lovely. It went down a bomb, absolute bomb. You went to a concert and sat down for 2 hours and listened to jigs and reels all night. Like, your head would be wrecked. You know. And even if you take the Coltis concerts, like, you know, the tours of Ireland and that, like, you know, they have it very well organised now. You know, it's all broken up with strat spades and
so there's different variants of
absolutely, and loads of songs and that. You have to variety
is very important. And would your interest for kind of delving out and learning kind of or researching these tunes, like did you find that interesting? Is it something you liked to find the hit of the day kind of thing, or even something you heard on the radio and passing it? Geez, I must find that, like the excitement of finding a new tune.
It was always nice to play something different, because you know, you could be playing the same thing all the time, but there's never a challenge in it either.
No.
So you have to have that challenge.
You see, it's so easy now, David. You know, you have YouTube and you have everything. If you want to use, if you heard a song and you know the name of it,
type it in and it's there.
And better still, you can type in the words. I want the words. And even the dots, you can download the music. But back in the 70s and 80s, there was no YouTube. There was no computer. So if you wanted a song, you had to actually find the CD it was on.
Boxfuls of tapes as well.
And that was the thing, because you'd go around and
the cassette tape.
And just on that thing of characters, like on people that you'd have, like, is there anyone else that kind of stands out, or that you'd have an old yarn about or a story about, that kind of?
Actually, I suppose you'd have encountered a few over the time, you know. Don't really recall now. I think I was telling you the other day about playing with the Bowfields.
Please tell us that one.
They were a local band from out the Bonnie area, and they got through to the All Ireland in 1979, and it was in Buncrana, and whatever happened anyway, a few of the members didn't turn up, and I remember on the street hearing someone shouting my name, and I turned around and he said, just one of them, and he said, we're in trouble. He said, we're looking for 2 people, and this was about probably 6 o'clock in the evening, and the competition used to start then at 8 on the 8. But and they were short a fiddle player and a flute player. So myself and Patricia Deere, the sister, stepped in.
Yeah.
No rehearsal.
Wow.
Nothing. We were told the tunes, and some of them I was trying to be, by putting them round my head. But anyways, went up and pulled it off. Pulled it off. Naturally, we didn't win it. we didn't win it. But actually, the band that should have won it that night was Paddy O'Brien's band, the Ormond Ceoil Band.
Fantastic.
But the same thing happened then. The drummer didn't turn up. And
they didn't get pledged.
They were. I think I remember saying it at the start. I remember hearing them announcing that they would be disqualified, but that they could play anyway. And of course, all the crowd wanted to hear them. They were brilliant.
Yeah.
They were brilliant, but they had the drums.
Well, why do you think this format was so essential? Like, I mean.
Well, I think there's strict rules about the members. You have to what? Is it 10 members?
You have to have 10 members. Yeah.
You have to have piano and drums.
You have to have piano and drums.
Okay,
and
so
after that, I think you
They're
can essential.
They're the essential. I suppose that's the basic Ceoil Band sound, isn't
I
it?
suppose thinking about it now, if you don't have a piano or a drummer, you kind of have.
And I suppose the drummer keeps everyone
together. It gives a growth on the sound, overall sound.
And
you couldn't picture a guitar there.
No, and if you haven't the piano vamping away, you don't have the Ceoil Band.
No, you don't have the Ceoil Band sound.
We had a lot of good years with the Bowfield Ceoil Band as well.
That's right, you mentioned that. So Bowfield Ceoil Band is a local band. Bowfield is out the area.
It's just out the Bunnyconn.
On the Bunnyconn.
Yeah.
We made a CD with them, and we spent probably 2 days, a weekend, I suppose, out in Letterfrack.
You weren't as good as your father's band, though. You weren't up and down to Dublin.
We had 2 days.
Oh, dear.
2 days out of it, and we made a nice LP.
Yeah. I remember at that time how we got to make the CD was that Sharon Shannon had this place rented in Letterfrack.
That's right, yeah.
And the whole gear moved in to make the recording, and they were probably sick of it. They were probably at it the whole week, and they were going away for the weekend, and they were taking a break, and anyways, Peter in the area was probably in touch.
Peter was the driving force,
and he arranged this. And the CD was produced by Peter Brown of RTE.
Oh right, Peter the Piper.
Yeah. And
it was Sharon Shannon's manager, Dunford.
John Dunford. Yeah.
Peter had been in touch.
But I remember going in. Was it a school or something? It was a big school.
A big school, yeah.
It was probably where they have the college now. Isn't there a woodwork college there?
In Letterfrack,
I think there is. I think
there's a GMIT building there.
No, it was an old school.
It was an old school.
It was an old school.
But I remember there were kind of blackboards all around the room, and there's probably the name of the tunes. And I remember that was where the first version of Galway Girl was recorded, and I remember seeing the name Steve Earle. Steve Earle actually sang on that first. He was a Letterfrack. He was a Letterfrack, and he did the first version of that. Yeah. The original.
He was doing the original.
Yeah. I think Monday or something.
He came on after.
Yeah. But Steve Earle. I think Steve Earle might have written the song.
I think he wrote it.
I think he wrote. I think he did. But I remember that. Yeah.
So you went down for the 2 days at the track and recorded the album.
Yeah. Stayed in the hostel. We'd go crack now.
Yeah. Lovely. Yeah.
We maybe for a couple of years we played too much, probably, maybe too many midweek gigs and that. And that was tough enough.
Well, I think you were able to handle it a bit better than me. I didn't like the late nights.
The Tuesday, Wednesday nights.
The Friday nights, the Friday night wasn't too bad.
You could sleep
on the Saturday night, but it wasn't.
But I used to be so glad when September had come, because we would have done a good bit of playing during the summer.
And to be a break.
September at least to be a break, and you might be only out maybe on 1 or 2 nights at the weekend.
But during the summer it was helpful.
It was, at your day job you have to be sharp.
You have to be sharp.
It wouldn't be easy now. And then, pubs just seem to get later and later.
And when you say, what time of a Wednesday or Tuesday night would you be home, like?
Well, we used to do a Wednesday night down in Enniscrone for a couple of years, didn't we? In Welsh.
You wouldn't be home before 2 o'clock anyway, Dave.
Would you not?
No.
Oh, you wouldn't?
No, you wouldn't. You see, by the time you pack up your gear, and then there's always somebody that you'd like to talk to, or somebody wants to talk to you, and you do stay around. You kind of unwind a little bit.
Yeah. You need that too. Yeah. So it'd be 2 o'clock back home.
It would.
You're up again at
8.
Yeah. It hadn't.
Not too bad if you weren't out again the following night, but.
But I'd say most people that were playing, like, was there many boys, with the exception of a few, that could actually do this as their full-time job, like, or was it always a kind of a side job?
Well, I suppose it was. You know, the band fellas back in the show band area, they were all full time. You know, they were all full time because they had to be. You know, and you know, I remember the Jack Ruan band here. One might be playing in Derry one night, maybe Cork the following night. So you wouldn't be back until 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
That was your job.
So you couldn't do it.
And they'd be playing 4 or 5 nights a week.
Oh, they would.
Yeah.
Oh, they would, especially in the summertime.
Yeah, summertime. Yeah.
And then there were no dances here like for Lint back in those times. You couldn't have a dance in Lint, and all the bands went off on an English tour for 3 or 4 weeks. So I mean, you couldn't do that if you were working.
No. So the professional bands toured. Then they went to abroad.
Oh, they went. They all went to England and Scotland for during Lint.
Wow.
During Lint.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was an accepted thing. Yeah.
And do you remember, like, again, going back in the days when the whole dancehall scene, when some of them would be very much governed by the church, we'd say, that kind of strictness, or, you know, men to one side, women to the other. Like, do you have any memories of that?
Well, like a lot of them were actually parish halls.
Parish halls,
Parish halls, and the church would be owned by the parish, and the PP, I suppose, would be the boss. You know, they might come in and out, but you know, they wouldn't be having their hands on.
No, they wouldn't be governing too much.
They wouldn't, no.
But would there be strict laws to adhere to, like you know, no, the stories we hear?
No, I think I've heard all the stories. I never saw any evidence of that.
Okay.
No, I never saw any evidence of that at all. No.
And they were all dry, so there's no alcohol served to them. There's minerals and tea and biscuits.
No, yeah. An odd fella like would come from the pub with a nagging in the pocket.
Of course you did. No, I wouldn't.
But it was only a couple of fellas. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And it was always the same few, really, especially
at the
Marquees as well. It was the same few would be drinking and the same few would be fighting.
Yeah. So they were the boys that were doing that. And we talked earlier on about the amount of bands that were in the county here. Like, I mean, you were in one at the time. I know of the Bros Welsh band. We mentioned the Jack Ruan band. Like, so in County Mayo, there had been.
Oh, there were
a good few bands.
There were 3 or 4 working bands here in Ballina at that time.
3 or 4 from Ballina.
Oh, there was. The Jack Ruan band would be the best known band, like, and you'd have a band called the Dominoes. George B. Jordan, he was a legend of the time.
Yes.
He had a band. His sister Maura used to sing in it, and mentioned the Dominoes. There was Bobby McCaffrey. They were called the Top Flights. They were a working band. Towards the end of the 60s, then there was the Fairways. They were a good band. They were kind of Gary Street and the Fairways. They were a very, very good band. But that was here. Then you had all up around the Clemorris area. You had a couple of different bands as well. The best known would have been the Royal Blues. You know, they were a huge band. They were probably in the top 5-6 bands in the country at the time. Oh, they were, yeah.
And what do you think it took to be up on that level? Was it musicianship, or was it?
Musicianship, first of all, probably, and good beat at the dances. You know, they all turned out well. You know, you had the Royal Blues used to have whitish trousers and light blue jackets and shirts and ties to match. And
So they were well dressed.
When you'd see 7 or 8 fellas up on the stage, like you had to turn out well. You had to turn out.
Uniform nearly.
You wouldn't be. I'd say you wouldn't be. I'd say if you turned up in just casuals, I'd say you wouldn't be. I'd say you wouldn't be aspect. Yeah. Without a doubt, you wouldn't be aspect. But then again, they were good, and they were all looking for the hit, all looking for the hit, all looking for the hit. And Doc Carroll, who was the guitar player with the Royal Blues, I remember at the time, and they had a fantastic singer from Carlow called Shea O'Hara. And he had recorded a couple of things, and he was a great singer. That fella singing Roll of Vogue, like, and them type of songs. But Doc Carroll then he recorded Old Man Trouble, and straight to number one, and it made them. Yeah. They were mega altogether then.
And back then, like, there'd be big numbers of people coming to these halls or marquees, as we talked about. Like, it wasn't just 50 or 100. It was like
you'd be up on 1,000 tonight. Yeah, you'd be up on a 1,000 tonight.
For the big bands, yeah.
For the big bands,
yeah. And that wouldn't be, I remember Big Tom in Killala at the marquees. He'd always close the marquees, the Easter marquees, on a Tuesday night, and you usually 1,200 people would be at that. Yeah, oh yeah.
That's a lot of people under
policy. It's a lot of people.
Yeah. When you think of it, like, it's an awful lot of people.
It's a lot of people. But different regime then, there probably wasn't much alcohol, so you might have an odd old scrap or an odd fight, but there's easy enough managed,
Because there wouldn't be a lot of alcohol sold, like
no. Dry.
And then the fusion from that we talked about as well, going from, we say, the show band scene into the Americana music that became very popular. I take it around the early 70s.
Yeah. I don't know how that happened. It probably was people were able to listen now to the likes of the Hank Williamses and George Jones, Merle Haggard, them type of people. And then I suppose Big Tom, in fairness to him, had been recording a lot of that stuff, even when they were big in the mid 60s. He had recorded a lot of Porter Wagoner songs and Hank Williams songs and all that, and it gave people a kind of a grow for it, and I suppose then people were probably able to buy the records and LPs and whatever at the time.
So really it wasn't like, even I was talking to Pat Field about, like, it wasn't RTE that was playing this music.
Oh no.
So it was these pirate Radio Luxembourg.
The Radio Luxembourg. Radio Luxembourg wasn't the best either. A pirate station called Radio Caroline.
The boat.
Started up in the North Sea, and they were mega. And they were playing all that kind of music.
Actually, a movie or documentary made about them a couple of years ago.
I think there was.
I remember seeing
I think there was. And they used to play all that type of music. And
what would it be considered as, though, by the Joe Soap on the streets, the RTE radio listener? Like, what would they have thought of this American denim wearing music, for instance?
They probably not a lot.
Yeah.
Probably not a lot.
Until it caught on.
Until it became popular, and then everyone loved it.
Yeah.
So the generations of people that would have grown up listening to the big band and the brass and the lovely and the American sound of the 30s and 40s, then all of a sudden was surrounded and bombarded with this American sound of the Merle Haggard.
Country sound. RTE, like, in those times, were never great for playing any of the Irish bands. They weren't really. It was very difficult to get on shows, we'd say, like the Late Late and on them. Like, in fairness to Ryan Turbiddy, he has done an awful lot, like, for the Irish music and the country music and
country music, very much for the country music.
Very much so. Very much so. I will give him that.
Yeah. So that's basically going back to the dancehall scene.
That's going back to the dancehall scene. Foxtrots, quick steps. Waltzes, slow waltzes. That's that type of thing. Yeah.
Which is huge as well.
Very popular.
Yeah. It was huge anyway, right up to the lockdown, which it'll probably come back. Sure, please God, it will anyway.
And if I asked you to kind of summarise where you think after this COVID thing, and because it's very much part of the whole series, is what we're in now. Okay, we don't have our sessions anymore. We can't go out on our Friday nights and play in high knees. Where do you see it going?
It's difficult to know, actually. It's difficult to know now.
It could well happen that music will come back into houses. I could see it.
For instance, house sessions.
House sessions,
Yeah, because you see,
if you weren't constrained by a certain number, You know, it'd be lovely to have a session here. If you could have your regular Friday night gang and go to another house.
Because I think
Friday night.
as musicians, it's important you play.
Oh God,
I think you're feeling the pinch of it.
Oh yeah,
you feel lonesome nearly.
You do.
I certainly have no interest in playing at home on my own.
So needless to say, you miss playing.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, this is Friday night now, and we should be going out someplace.
Yeah.
We should have a couple of tunes.
And we do know as well that all the rest of the group that came out.
They do, yeah.
It shouldn't be the same group every night, but
they miss
everybody missed it.
Yeah.
It's shocking, really, when you think of it.
Yeah.
Because again, like, I know people that be older than any of us. Like that, I seen this very sad picture there not so long ago of a man sitting having a pint in a kind of a pub stroke restaurant place, and he had his phone out on the table beside him with the timer set on it. He was afraid to stay over the hour and he had a bit of a dinner and a pint.
Yeah.
And he sat on his own looking out this window, and I'm thinking to myself,
it's sad.
That's sad.
So imagine the generations of people that only knew going out to listen to you on a Friday night.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Yeah.
Sitting at home alone.
They're sitting at home alone.
Yeah.
It must have caused a lot of depression, I'd say, this whole lockdown. It has to. Yeah. But we were talking yesterday about Paddy Mills.
Yes, again. Character, yeah.
We had great crack over the years with Paddy.
Yeah. He was iconic, really. Yeah.
Oh, he was a super. We used to have a session in where the loft in Ballina is now. It was Barrett's at the time.
Yeah.
We used to have a session there once a week, I think.
He played there with
every Wednesday night.
Paul Morell.
Yeah, Paul Morell.
And Joe Carey, was it?
Joe Carey used to often be in. There was a lad there, Brendan Howley, played the accordion.
Paddy Gorham.
Paddy Gorham
would come out.
He would. Oh, he would. Yeah.
That'll be a late one. I often tell the story about Paddy Mills and how good-natured he was.
Yeah.
When I was working, I was out on the travelling bank. One particular day, and we were stopped at Barnatraw at Healy's there, and the driver of the van went in to get something in the shop, and I was outside serving customers in the back, and Paddy inquired as to who was on the travelling bank, and when he heard it was me, he landed out to me with 2 bars of chocolate. And I could never forget. I just thought it was the kindest thing, you know.
He was very good natured.
Yeah, very, very good natured.
He was quite humorous, like he
he was a character.
He had stories about everyone and knew everyone.
I remember one night we were down at a session in Inniscrone, in a house, and there was a guard in Inniscrone at the time who came from out the Canaveral country actually. And
Hugh Gallagher.
And was very interested in the music.
We often went to his house for sessions.
Very interested in the music. But anyways, Paddy was down. Was Paddy at the session now?
Paddy was coming home from someplace.
He was coming home from someplace, and it was Hugh that was telling us. Yeah.
Hugh Gallagher was on duty,
and
he was stopping cars.
Yeah.
And Paddy had a good few drinks on him, I think. And Hugh knew him when he stopped him. He'd know.
Well, he didn't. He
wasn't 100% sure.
He
was questioning him anyway, and
he said step out of the car or something. And when Paddy stepped out, I think he opened the back door. He must never have opened it. Oh, he said, "What's in the back there?" So stuff packed up and stuff. And when he opened the back door, the fiddle fell out. Just.
But these people are so important. Like, we're talking about them today, and I think there's others we probably have forgotten about. But like how important these people are, how important the character of the person is, as much as their music. You know, their stories, their humour, what we remember of them.
Oh yeah, sure. You know, even if they weren't playing the tune right or know the tune, their personality carried.